Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. ISIS, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. In a recent IndieWire article, Terminator Dark Fate director Tim Miller decided to take a shot at fans of the Terminator franchise by calling them misogynistic internet trolls. And in this article, your Tim Miller believes that because comic fans, sci-fi fans, and fantasy fans who enjoy the Terminator franchise are not really sold on his Terminator Dark Fate, this is his reason for calling them misogynistic internet trolls, because these films that in recent years, like Ghostbusters and Star Wars, have featured female characters in leading roles. Well, I've been a fan of the Terminator franchise since 1991 with Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and I am a writer of heroines like Isis, E-Steam, and Matilda Crowley, and as a writer of heroines, I can tell you that it's not that people are misogynistic internet trolls and that has them upset about these female characters in leading roles. It's the fact that many of these heroines in these leading roles in movies like Ghostbusters and Star Wars, many of these heroines are poorly done, and many, like Rey from Star Wars, are Mary Sue characters, basically avatars for people like Kathleen Kennedy, so that they can go out here and play a fantasy in an already established universe. And many times these stories feature no character development, no character transformation arc, and feature no actual sort of story with any sort of substance, layers, or depth. And these are the reasons why many comic fans, sci-fi fans, and fantasy fans of franchises that are beloved, like Terminator, have a serious issue with these new releases of films like Terminator Dark Fate. Because when it comes down to films like your Tim Miller's Terminator Dark Fate, many of these stories that they're trying to do these days, they focus more on pushing a diversity agenda and identity politics than giving us rich, multidimensional characters in a full character transformation arc, like what we got with Sarah Connor in 1984's The Terminator and 1991's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And the whole argument about misogynistic internet trolls falls completely apart when you consider the history of the Terminator franchise, which has featured heroines in lead roles all throughout the entire franchise. Because in 1984's The Terminator, Sarah Connor was the main character of the story, and she had a full character transformation arc in that film, where she went from very bubbly party girl to strong heroine. And then Terminator 2 Judgment Day, where she went from this nurturing mother into a more balanced woman in working with her son, John Connor, and trying to help protect him. So we saw a character transformation arc in both movies with Sarah Connor's character, and we saw that Sarah Connor in both movies managed to remain strong, and she also managed to remain sexy, and she also had very extreme beauty all throughout all two of those films. So when we look at the original Terminator franchise, we see that it always featured heroines, and even in lesser Terminator films like Terminator 3, we also saw the TX, who was played by Christina Loken, manage to still maintain her femininity while she was out here in the role of a Terminator. So with the TX, we managed to get femininity, but with this film, your Tim Miller wants to call fans of the Terminator franchise misogynistic internet trolls. And I don't see any misogynistic internet trolls here as related to the Terminator franchise. What I see are a lot of frustrated fans who remember how great this franchise was back in 1984 and 1991 with the Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which to this day is so well done that it literally is even better than movies like Avengers Endgame, in my opinion, in terms of special effects and storytelling. So I don't see any misogyny as related to this film's fans being upset about it. As a man who has watched both the Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, my issue with this film has to do with what Tim Miller presented on screen. And what he presented on screen in that Dark Fate trailer was an extremely uninspired series of sequences that really don't give a viewer any sort of compulsion to spend money on this movie when it's released in November, because the visuals he presented in that chase sequence, they were actually worse than what James Cameron presented in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And the characters he has presented on screen, they're very bland, they're not compelling, and the action sequences, they are far below what James Cameron presented to us in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So that's my issue with your Tim Miller's Terminator Dark Fate. And when I look at Dark Fate as a film on the merits, it's just not a good film. So your Tim Miller is going on in this article talking about if you're all enlightened, she'll play like gangbusters. And I'm an enlightened guy again, and I write heroines like Isis, like Eastine, like Matilda Crowley for my books like the Isis series, the Eastine series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy. I've written strong heroines in a variety of stories, and I know what a good story with a heroine is all about. And I did not see anything in that story for Dark Fate that showed me a strong heroine. All I saw was an image of these women overcompensating, trying to appear to be strong by taking on masculine traits, because that's what insecure women try to do when they're trying to appear strong, is they try to overcompensate by putting on more of a masculine image because they believe that masculinity represents strength. So when you understand how to write heroines, you understand that what makes a heroine strong is not the external, it is actually related to the internal. And we saw that with James Cameron's The Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. We saw how Sarah Connor was not only strong as related to her being able to deal with things, but we saw her strength of character and her resolve, because she had a deep hatred for that Terminator in Terminator 2 Judgment Day based on what happened in the first Terminator. But as the second Terminator movie went on, we began to see her strength of character as she learned how to understand this machine, and how she began to understand that there was a semblance of humanity in this machine, and that it had learned and evolved from the experience with her. And that was a major part of her character transformation arc. But that was all lost on your Tim Miller, who I think is still full of it after directing these Deadpool movies, and thinks he's a hot property, and thinks that he can go out here and talk all of this smack to all of these Terminator fans out here, and him talking all of that smack to all of these Terminator fans out here, calling them misogynistic internet trolls. This is not going to help his argument. Moreover, it's not going to get people at a reason to come out and go see Terminator Dark Fate, a film that is so caught up in its own identity politics and is so woke that most people don't have a reason to go see it, because for all of the flash of the identity politics, we don't get much in terms of substance. And because we don't get much in terms of substance, that's what people have a problem with. But what your Tim Miller wants to do is call you a misogynist, all because you are presenting valid arguments based on merit as related to what he presented on the screen. And what he wants to do is shame you for not going to see his film and shame you for making constructive criticisms of his film. And that's insulting the very audience that goes out here and is going to spend money to watch that film, because when it comes down to a film, what is presented on screen is what you're going to be judged by, and you can't call the audience a misogynist because they present their opinion regarding what you have presented, and that's not what a person who's a professional does. That's what a very insecure person does, is that whenever they get criticized, they get on the defensive, and they go out here and they start attacking people because they are insecure about taking constructive criticism. And in some cases, some people, I believe like Tim Miller, know that the project they have produced is bad, so they want to get on the defensive so they don't have to deal with that criticism from people. So they don't want to deal with the criticism about how poor quality their project is, so they go out of their way to attack the audience, calling them misogynistic internet trolls, because these fans out here know what the Terminator franchise is all about. They've been watching this movie for over 30 years, and they come expecting a certain level of quality. And it's clear from the trailer that Tim Miller presented to everyone, he did not meet the expectations of many Terminator fans like myself, and he didn't make the effort to say, look, I made a mistake, look, I'm sorry about this film, and he didn't take any responsibility. No, instead he decided to deflect, and that's a big problem with many of these so-called woke people, is that they want to appear to be self-aware, but a true self-aware person is going to take responsibility for whatever they produce. I know as a writer, I have to take responsibility for the books I produce. If there's an error in a book, I take ownership of it, and then I go out and try to correct the next edition. And I try to take constructive criticism from people, because that's all part of being part in the arts, is that you have to take criticism. Unfortunately, when it comes down to many of these people who are in Hollywood these days, they want to live in a bubble, and they want to be able to make whatever films they want without taking any sort of criticism. And then they want to go out here and call many of the fans out here misogynistic internet trolls, when many fans like myself are not misogynist. I mean, a man making a constructive critique of a film project that has been released to the public is not a misogynist if he says there is something wrong with the technical aspects of the film and something wrong with the structure of the story. Because with Dark Fate, when I look at this film from a critical perspective, I do not see a film on the level of The Terminator or Terminator 2 Judgment Day. All I see is a desperate attempt from a film director who is clearly out of his depth based on those visuals, and someone looking to overcompensate by trying to give us these masculine acting females in this film, instead of giving us heroines who show us the best parts of being a woman and the best internal parts of a woman's character. That's what a writer like myself, who writes heroines, does every day on books like Isis and Eastine and Spellbound and Spinsterella and books like The Thetas. I have been writing heroines for over 25 years. And when I look at what was presented there in Dark Fate, it was extremely shallow, it was extremely flat, and again, very uninspired storytelling. I mean, it's the same old story, but with even less substance, and it's all about showing us this so-called strong woman. And the great irony of it is, in their attempt to show us this strong woman through this identity politics narrative, what they do is they weaken the character of Sarah Connor, who was one of the greatest and strongest heroines in 20th century cinema, a heroine who showed us what was great about being a woman and showed us what strength of a woman truly was all about. So what they're trying to do here with this identity politics, ironically, is weakening Sarah Connor as an icon, because what made Sarah Connor an icon was her grit, her determination, her strength of character, and her ability to work with the men around her. Whereas in Dark Fate, we don't see her working with the men and supporting the men. No, we see her with this other Terminator film where it's all led by women, and it's all about showing us how strong a woman is on her own, when in actuality, when it comes down to women, they work best when they work with men. And that's what's missing from this Terminator Dark Fate, is that balance that was a part of T2, because T2 was really about balance, because that T-800 robot with his masculinity was balancing off of Sarah Connor's strong femininity. So there was a lot of balance there, because you had the 800, which was balancing off her, and both of them were working towards shaping the balance in John Connor. So there was a story there James Cameron was telling about the role of men and the role of women in that film, and all of that was lost on Tim Miller, and it was lost on the screenwriter of Dark Fate, and that's why this film will suffer a dark fate at the box office. And what your Tim Miller is trying to do is get in front of that dark fate in an effort to save his career from careening off the cliff. And what he wants to do is go out here and start a circular argument where he starts calling fans of the Terminator franchise misogynists in the pre-promotion stage, so that when the film flops, he can then blame those fans and by calling them misogynists. Well, men are not misogynists if they don't like a film, and men are not misogynists if they don't like a film based on the merits of what is presented on screen. That doesn't make a man a misogynist if he looks at these visuals and the story in a film and he judges it based on the content of what's presented. So that shaming language, it just has no bearings on this Terminator Dark Fate film. So your Tim Miller, his whole argument there, it falls completely apart once you take a critical examination of his statements. He's sitting there calling fans misogynists and saying that they're intimidated by this new Terminator. I'm not intimidated by this new Terminator. As a writer of heroines, I can tell you this character does not impress me, and this character does not impress me because it's a very flat character, it's a very underdeveloped character, and it's a visually very bland and generic character, and it's not even visually attractive. And you need all of those elements if you want to go out here and sell a story. I mean, in order to sell a story, you have to make it attractive. And when I look at Mackenzie Davis on screen as the Terminator, she just does not really grab me. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, what made him attractive to viewers was he was this ripped bodybuilder, and guys aspired to be that, and girls wanted to get with that guy. But this character is androgynous, and it doesn't really grab you at all. I mean, when you look at the visual of Mackenzie Davis, she isn't compelling, and then you compound that on an extremely terrible story that's really flat compared to the original. And this is the reason why the film is really scaring the F out of people, because they understand how great the Terminator franchise was. And when they look at this film, it's a very poor film overall. And that's what has so many fans disappointed. Because as I see it, the Terminator franchise should have ended in 1991. But because Hollywood is too afraid to take a risk on a new original character, they would rather try to push this Terminator franchise into the 21st century and try to appeal to new audiences by showing how woke they are. But when they do this, all they show the world is how broke they're going to be by continuing to make films like this. If you'd like to try some of my books that feature heroines like ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the Spinsterella trilogy, and the Thetas, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. There you can pick up my books featuring heroines in paperback and Kindle formats. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box, my PayPal by clicking the link in the description box, or my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, E-Steam Goddess of. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a demonic dominatrix in this action-packed all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Goddess of in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.